All right, welcome back to another Paper Movies Novelization Book Club discussion. This is one of our Halloween specials that we promised for this month. Today, I am joined by Noah from the YouTube channel Quality Autism, who has been a recurring guest on our discussions quite a bit, especially for the 007 ones and the Predator. And again, I'm sorry about that one again.
Yeah, thanks.
But today, we're going to be discussing the novelization to a film that is more or less a guilty pleasure for both me and Noah. It's Stephen Sommers' take on the classic Universal Studios monsters, and that is Van Helsing. There we go. Another light in my camera is kind of reflected. But yep, the novelization was written by Kevin Ryan, and the film starred Hugh Jackman as Van Helsing, and it featured the top three of the Universal monsters lineup: Dracula, the Wolfman, and Frankenstein's monster. So, Noah, again, thanks again for joining us on this one.
My pleasure.
So, getting into a little brief synopsis, Van Helsing. This take on it, if you've read the original Dracula novel, this is a completely different take. He's not a elderly professor that just knows a lot about vampires. In this one, he's an agent of the Vatican whose job is to vanquish the world of evil creatures. And he is, after defeating Mr. Hyde, he is sent to Transylvania to go and stop Count Dracula, who has a sinister plan of his own that involves the Frankenstein monster. And also he comes across other creatures from the film series like Igor, the Wolfman. And also he's sent to protect Anna Valerius, who is the last of Dracula's descendants. And as there was revealed that there's a promise that ancestor theirs made to God that they would never enter heaven unless Dracula was vanquished. Excuse me. So just he's sent to protect her and to kill Dracula. So, Noah, what'd you think?
Overall, this movie. Okay, first off, with your point about Van Helsing being a different character, he very much is, because he's not even called Abraham Van Helsing. He's Gabriel Van Helsing.
Yeah, and I noticed something about that was in the movie, but not in the book, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But yes, this one he's far younger. He's and he's a vampire, or he's a monster hunter essentially.
He's basically James Bond.
Yeah, James Bond in the 19th century.
Yeah, which is already evident from the movie, but a little bit more in the novelization, because early on we have a bunch of extra stuff already. And one of the extra stuff was a scene where he meets his boss. And that was pretty much like a James Bond meets M scene.
I noticed that too, and I like how normally, like in the James Bond movies, like Q would just pop out of nowhere and give him his gadgets, but in this one, Carl, who is essentially the Q figure, just goes with him on this mission. But in a way, it's also kind of Van Helsing is kind of a mix between James Bond and Wolverine, which another Hugh Jackman character, because he's an agent, but he's also a man of mystery, as he has no recollection of his past. He just knows that he knows that he was around for certain moments in history. It does imply who he really is, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But I'm going to be completely honest. I'm a fan of some of the stuff that they added in this book that was not in the film. Like, especially with, we get more focus on, there's like a couple of scenes with Anna Valerius, especially like a flashback of her and her family, I believe, hunting a werewolf. And there's also where Count Dracula meets Dr. Frankenstein.
Oh yeah, that impressed me, because that was the very opening of the book.
I was not expecting that when I first read it.
Yeah, because famously the movie just opens with this very nice like black and white prologue scene,
Hmm.
which already has Frankenstein working with Dracula. But the novelization really, it kind of feels like it tries to be accurate to the book Frankenstein in a way.
Hmm.
I noticed a lot of like similarities there, which again, that's nice. And yeah, we see their first meeting and how he starts working for Dracula, where I think there may be a little discrepancy between book and movie. Because I think in the movie, Dracula says he gave Frankenstein the castle in Transylvania. But I think in the book, that's Frankenstein's castle, like his family home, basically.
Yeah, I think from what I remember, he just gave him the equipment that he needed.
Mm.
If I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, but what I loved about that also is that it answered a question that I've always had regarding that first scene. Um, like whenever like Frankenstein is trying to escape the castle because the villagers are inciting a riot within the castle walls. Uh, Dracula reveals his plan. I mean, it's off screen, but he reveals his plan to Dr. Frankenstein. And I was always wondering if Dr. Frankenstein knew Dracula was a vampire,
Mm.
because he held up a sword to Dracula, and Dracula's like, "Oh, you can't kill me," and he just impales himself, and he just seemed utterly shocked. And I'm like, at first when I saw this one, I was like, shouldn't you have known that? I mean, like that wasn't going to work. But in the novelization, it's pretty evident that he has no idea what's going on, and that he just
Mhm.
realizes that oh, there's more than this Dracula than meets the eye. So,
Yeah.
but
And I like, again, that it's similar to the Frankenstein novel. I like that Frankenstein is basically a good guy in the
mhm.
story, and he's just tricked by Dracula. Their whole interactions at the beginning I like, especially when he first meets Dracula. He's like knocking at Frankenstein's door, and Dracula has to ask to be let in because that's part of the vampire mythology.
Yeah, I think I remember that from the original novel, that once you invite a vampire in, they can come in anytime, but they have to be invited in, I believe.
Mhm.
Yeah, and again, we get the scene with Van Helsing meeting the Cardinal, and I just, like I said, that whole opening I thought was much better than the film. I mean,
Mhm.
um, don't get me wrong, the opening to the film was good, and it worked. But I mean, I just like that it answered like that big question that I had. Is like, did Dr. Frankenstein know about Dracula being a vampire? But now we know that he did not.
Mhm.
um,
What I do like with the opening, with Van Helsing specifically as the character, the movie just jumps right into it. You know, with him chasing Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
mhm.
And the novelization has that little like M briefing scene where he's like, basically, you're on thin ice, you know, now get us this guy, that's your next mission. And they already talk about the London assignment having happened. They go a
Mhm.
little bit more into that, which is nice. Which we should point
Yeah,
out that that was like a little short film, an animated one.
yeah, they had an animated one. Yeah, like it was. I actually bought that recently. It was like 30 minutes, and it's not bad. It was. I kind of wish though that like they kept the story going like after the movie, and like had like an animated series. I don't know. I mean, but
I mean,
that
that
would.
was kind of the plan to make more Van Helsing movies after this one. You know, going after more famous monsters.
Yeah, I remember. I think I heard a rumor that the Mummy was supposed to
Mhm.
be next on his target list, but uh, now there was also scenes that were actually featured in this novelization that happened at different points than in the film. And one of those is when Velkin kills the werewolf that infects him. That actually happened, I believe. It was after Dr. Jekyll was already killed by Van Helsing,
Mhm.
and but in the film it happened later. Like I believe it happened after um, Van Helsing was sent by the Cardinal to go defeat Dracula. He got his mission briefing,
Mhm.
and I thought that worked really too. I always like it when they kind of mix and match things up and everything. They did that in our last discussion of when we discussed Batman Returns, there was scenes featured at different times, but there was one key difference that okay, yeah, I'll go ahead and get into basically it's revealed in the film that Van Helsing is really the Archangel Gabriel, um, who was sent down from heaven to defeat, to rid the world of evil. And, because they make references that he's the left hand of God. And even in the film, Dracula at one point refers to him as that. And, but in the novelization, it doesn't actually state that. So I was wondering if maybe that was like intentional, like they didn't want to fully reveal it. Like, because I know sometimes novelizations come out before the film, and maybe they just didn't want to reveal that. But did you catch that too?
A little bit. I think in the novelization there was less of a focus on the mystery of who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember that before I rewatched the movie, I remember that as being like a big thing early on. That it's like his boss basically giving all the exposition, like, we found you and you don't have any memories. And in the book it came off like it wasn't as big of a deal.
Right. It was, less mystery, more fighting monsters. And I like what the extra stuff they added with the Frankenstein monster as well. There is one plot hole that I picked up on. It's both in the book and the novel and all. But one of my biggest pet peeves, and Frankenstein, the original novel Frankenstein, is like one of my favorite books. I'm one of those people that is like, no, that's not Frankenstein. That's his creation. Frankenstein's the man. But I did like how they kind of did that in the novel. Like, he just says, you can refer to me as my father's name, Frankenstein. I'm like, okay, that I can appreciate. Yeah, he's, I will call that version Frankenstein, but everything else, no, he's Frankenstein's monster.
But I really like that, and like the monster's just perspective in general.
Yeah, there's more humanity to him, and in the original versions, like in the 30s films, he's just kind of he's just a childlike human where he doesn't understand the world or his consequences. He's just kind of going off of instinct. And
while in the book he's pretty much like a philosopher, so to speak.
Yeah,
and they kept that here, which I really like. Like, it shows that the director and screenwriter Stephen Sommers apparently wasn't just inspired by the Universal movies, but also by the source material.
Yeah, both in the Van Helsing and in the original novel, like the monster is like very misunderstood, and that's what kind of leads to some of the hatred towards him, is that he's just misunderstood. And I like that they kind of kept that, as you were saying, kept that going throughout this film. But there was one plot hole that I picked up on, and it was when the monster, after Dracula and his wives resurrect their offspring, which was like the whole key, is that they need the monster because they can't sustain life without the monster. And the Frankenstein's monster reveals that those only came from one bride, like that scene where they hatched them. I'm like, how did he know that? He's been hiding for over a year. How did he know that? I didn't catch on to that until like today. I'm like, there's no way he could have known that all came from one bride, but unless I missed something. But did you have any like favorite parts that were added to the novel?
That were added? Definitely all the Frankenstein stuff, because one thing I had with the movie was it's very Dracula focused, which, I mean, it's Van Helsing, so makes sense to have Dracula be the central villain. But I always felt like Frankenstein and Jekyll and Hyde came a bit short. So I like that the novelization expanded on them a bit. Like I said, they talked more about the London assignment with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and obviously Frankenstein got a big opening portion. I think it was like 30 pages.
Yeah, it was at least 2 or 3 chapters. Yeah. I do also, I think it's interesting they decided to chase Jekyll and Hyde in Paris, because for some reason I thought I heard somewhere that originally he was going after Quasimodo, but
Hmm.
it wouldn't have made sense because kind of like Frankenstein's monster, Quasimodo is a misunderstood figure. So I guess they just decided to change it to Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and give the exposition that was like, oh, I was chasing you all through Europe or something, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that would have been more brutal to see him kill Quasimodo, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's still a bit sad when he kills Mr. Hyde, but he turns back into the innocent Dr. Jekyll, but that's a bit more. It's not as brutal as him killing Quasimodo.
um, and I thought it was kind of funny is because like it is kind of like a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen where
Hmm.
when they are going to capture Mr. Hyde, he's also in Paris. So
Yeah.
fun
You know,
little.
I don't think I've seen League of Extraordinary Gentlemen since I was a child, but as a kid, I always thought, like, are those two like the same movies or the same franchise?
I thought it was too because both those versions, Mr. Hyde's kind of like the Hulk, like he's just more of a brutish, you know, killer than and in some versions he's just kind of it's he kind of keeps a similar form as Dr. Jekyll, but he's just more savage, I guess.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was very interesting. Yeah, I one of the biggest things, and this is in both the movie and the novel, it's something I think is really interesting, and I was kind of wanting your thoughts on it as well, Noah.
Hmm.
Basically, they make Dracula almost virtually impossible to kill, and it's all in both stories. It's a mystery on how to kill Dracula, and they don't really fully explain, but it's kind of more like this is how it is. But basically in this one, Dracula could only be killed from the bite of a werewolf,
Hmm.
and I was kind of wanting like that's very untraditional to vampire lore. So what do you think?
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely something different. I'm not sure if I like it or not. I mean, in the movie, it is, the end fight when Van Helsing is turning into the werewolf and attacking him. So we get the vampire werewolf fight. And I guess that was just the point, to have that cool action scene. So that's the reason, I guess.
Yeah, it kind of. I was wondering. Okay, have you seen the movie Bud Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein?
No, but I know about it.
Well, I won't spoil too much, but Dracula and the Wolfman get into a fight in that one too.
Hmm.
But I was wondering if that's what they were kind of trying to.
Oh, another
Uh,
homage, you mean?
yeah, because it's
Possible.
the original Universal actors, Bela Lugosi, Lon Chaney Jr.
Mhm.
So that's where my mind immediately went to
Yeah.
because
So, but my guess would be from like an outside perspective, they did it, one, because it would be a cool action scene,
hmm
and two, probably so that like the werewolf as a monster has importance to the story, like bigger one.
hmm
That would be
yeah,
my guess.
yeah, that's actually that's a good point because Van Helsing wouldn't really have too much difficulty killing the Wolfman because all it takes is a silver bullet, and he almost does a couple of times, but something just keeps him from shooting him. And like Anna, when she finds out it's her brother, uh, it's and it's also kind of like I do like that the twist that they have with it that he has like I think just a few minutes to be able to kill Dracula before he becomes under Dracula's control.
Hmm.
And there's also that Dracula or werewolves don't revert back to their human form. That like their first full moon, then they change back. They forever stay a werewolf, I think.
Hmm.
But yeah, I will say this though: the film is a little. I mean, me and my wife were watching it today, and she was just like, "This is like," she said, "This is one of the most over the top movies I've ever seen."
Yep, very intentionally. I mean, it definitely feels like an early 2000s movie in a lot of ways. I mean,
hmm
obviously the big one being Kate Beckinsale being there,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, just seeing her, it's like looking at those like Resident Evil movies or like Underworld. That's just the image I have in my head.
Yeah, I heard that Stephen Sommers wanted her to play Anna Valerius, but she was worried that, or but he was worried that people would just assume that that's her character from Underworld. So, but once her agent like gave her the script, she just immediately signed. I was like, yes, I want in, I'm in. So,
Mm.
but yeah, the acting in the movie is, I think Hugh Jackman is like the most tame of
Yeah.
all of all the characters in the whole movie, and just everybody else is like way over the top, and
Yeah,
it's
and I
fun.
loved. Yeah, it is definitely fun. I loved it. I mean, like you said, the movie is just a guilty pleasure. It's just there to entertain, and
Mhm.
I'm all there for it.
Yeah, it's fun to just like, if it's like, if you just want to turn your brain off and just like watch some, over the top fun, then, that's definitely it. Like, um but for, I did think that the actors, like the for like what the script and the story they were given, they did pretty good. I mean,
Mm.
Richard Roxburgh, for his take on Dracula, I thought um was pretty good. I wasn't a big fan of his voice though. It was kind of more Igor-ish, if that makes sense.
Mm. I did like
Um
Igor in the movie.
yeah, Igor's
I think
he's a
I think he's played by the same actor who played Benny, the scumbag side character in The Mummy, the director's previous movie.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I think I remember, I was checking the cast, and I think I recognized him. And I do know that one of Dracula's brides is actually Richard Roxburgh, the actor's wife, I think.
I think, yeah, I think I heard that. I think they met during shooting the movie.
That's interesting.
Hmm.
But I will say this: the film is fun, but uh, on its own, the book is actually really good. And I was like, I could see this like being an actual book before a movie, like,
Oh yeah, definitely.
and it's um it's I like that you could basically like, with this, like, if you've seen the movie first, then you already kind of picture like how everybody's saying their lines and everything. But if this was a book first, like, I think it would add like quite a bit of like imagination to it, if that makes sense.
Mhm. But yeah, I would say both work as an homage, to the classics.
Yeah, which, by the way, I'm kind of sporting my new classic
Mm.
shirt that I brought recently. Yeah, I definitely recommend it. Like, if you guys like ever come across this, I would definitely pick it up and read it. And weirdly enough, despite it, not being received well by critics, it's actually like most of the people that I work with, they love this movie. Like, um, there's a girl I work with who quotes the who's quoted the brides on a couple occasions, and everybody agrees that the werewolves in this movie are like one of the best ones they've seen. And there was also, I was going to Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios, and they have a lot of the monster merchandise. One of my other coworkers was like, "Hey, if they have anything Van Helsing, can you grab it?" And like, this is like my second day working with him, and he's like, "Man, just like, I'm glad I'm not the only one that enjoys this movie." So
Yeah. It's a classic in its own right, a cult classic, as they say.
yeah, I we mentioned it briefly earlier, but I was gonna kind of I was thinking about this. I'm gonna kind of put you on the spot because you're the out of the both of us, you're the one that's actually written books. So if you were to write a sequel to this, like,
Ooh,
how would you approach it?
ooh, that's a big task. I guess I think it would make sense to again have one singular villain, like
Hmm.
not getting overloaded with too much, but also combining it with another monster, like they kind of did here, Frankenstein and Dracula. I would be thinking, what would be the options? Like Creature from the Black Lagoon? Would that be something?
Yeah, there's also that, the Phantom of the Opera, the Mummy.
I'm thinking of like lamer monsters we can use in like a James Bond-esque pre-title sequence in a
Creature of
little
the
action.
Creature of the Black Lagoon would probably definitely fit that bill.
Yeah.
So you would write one where he would go after the creature from the Black Lagoon.
No, that would be definitely like a pre-title sequence, its own little 5-minute
Oh,
movie, so to speak. We get an opening title sequence similar to James Bond, maybe, if it's not too on the nose, and then we get the main plot.
Yeah, I get you. Like kind of like what they did with Mr. Hyde. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about it too, and like Hugh Jackman is reprising his role as Wolverine, so I'm just like thinking like he should come back and like bring back Van Helsing, but I heard they're actually rebooting it. So again, the everything gets rebooted nowadays. I was thinking like since Dracula was killed, I was actually thinking of like writing a story to where he's like lost a sense of purpose, like it's been like decades and there hasn't been very many monsters because he already destroyed Dracula. So like I would write it to where like maybe Dracula comes back, is resurrected somehow, but he's older and he's not a werewolf, so he has to try to figure out another way to destroy him. So that's kind of the approach that I would take on it. But yeah, so if you were to grade this, what how would you rate it?
Well, like we said, the book on its own works well. I like all the added stuff. And again, specifically, I want to give a special mention to just Frankenstein's monster again, because I think movie-wise, for the longest time, this was like the most accurate portrayal. Because I really like the actor who portrays the monster in the movie. His line delivery is very, over the top, but I think it really works. And again, making him sympathetic, and his scenes and everything in the book, like when he wakes up and he's just confused because Dr. Frankenstein and Dracula are fighting. And he just has these thoughts like, is that my father? Like I can hear him, and he makes the connection and stuff. That's good stuff. So overall, I would give this like maybe an 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10?
I think it's up there. It works on its own, and it also adds to the movie, which is, that's what a novelization should do.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I would probably, I normally give for novelizations letter grades, but yeah, I do love the extended stuff with Frankenstein's monster, as well as like the additional scenes, like with the flashback of Anna Valerius. And also, I forgot to mention, they actually revealed the werewolf that bit Velkin, like that was killed by Velkin. Like they actually had a brief scene with him that of him reverting back to human. And I think I remember him saying that he says, "Thank you, you've saved me from." And there was also one other thing, is that the second bride that was killed, Verona, she actually before she was impaled, I like that she had this sense of freedom too, that she was finally free of Dracula. I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, with all the additions, like we both agree, it works great on its own as a book. And it's, I'm gonna give it probably a B plus, maybe between B plus A minus range. It's I mean, the story itself is just, I mean, it's cheesy in some spots, and I mean the film.
I mean, it's obviously,
yeah.
If you make an homage like this,
yeah, but it's a lot better portrayed in the book than in the movie, because, like we said, the movie's just very over the top and eccentric.
But here's the real question now: would you recommend this just as a book on its own to someone who's not necessarily a fan of the Universal monster movies, but of like the classical novels they were based on? Dracula, Frankenstein, Jekyll and Hyde. Because I think those people who only like those classical books can still have fun with this.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I would, if you're more of a reader and you like the original books, like I think this one would be a good good book to read for, like, also like what's the comparison, like a unique story. So yeah, for someone that's never seen the movie, like I would say that recommending this book would, you know, and I would like even go as far as say like you don't even have to see the movie if you don't want to. Like you could just read this book and it'd be good.
Mhm.
But and like as you said, that's kind of my criteria for novelizations is like I like it when it's not just 100% the film. It adds like some extra little pieces here and there.
Mhm.
So yeah, A minus I'll probably say is at very best A minus, very lowest B plus. So
All right.
But yeah, that'll pretty much wrap it up for our discussion of Van Helsing. Definitely check it out. You'll have fun with it, and especially if you really love the film, it'll be a fun comparison. So, but Noah, thank you again for joining us. You know, especially it's always appreciated because you have to get up a little earlier than
Yeah.
and so we do very much appreciate you always being on, and always look forward to having you back on the channel soon.
Yeah. Thank you. Well worth it.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And yep. So, any more closing thoughts before we sign out for the day?
Just that this is a good read for October.
Yes, definitely a good Halloween read, especially if you're a fan of vampires and werewolves and such. So, but guys, thank you so much for joining us on this discussion of Van Helsing. We hope that you guys have a great one and have a happy Halloween and be safe. And we'll catch you next time.